Twitter is threatening legal action against Meta over its new social media platform, Threads. That is according to a letter obtained by news site Semaphore. It's addressed to Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and accuses the company of unlawfully using Twitter's trade secrets. The letter says Meta stole Twitter's intellectual property by hiring former employees to develop a copycat app. Meta denies that claim. Threads saw 50 million users sign up on its first 24 hours. And for more on this, I'm joined live now by Richard Latchman, Associate Professor at Toronto Metropolitan University's RTA School of Media. Professor, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Some may consider this the battle of the billionaires. I want to get your thoughts on what you make of Twitter potentially taking Meta to court.
Sure. Well, I think we're probably all aware that the battle for our attention happens not just on the App Store downloads or the Google Play downloads. It happens in laws, in courts. It happens in public media. It happens with the billionaires sniping at one another on other social media platforms.
Right.
So the case that Twitter seems to be making here, or Elon Musk through his lawyers is making, that apparently they're suggesting Meta has hired former Twitter engineers, poached them is the language they're using, and then taken some of the intellectual property of Twitter. This might be a tough thing to prove. So on the one hand, it's hard to call something poaching when Twitter fired huge numbers of engineers. That's not exactly someone seeking out and tempting them over to your site. Twitter, under Elon Musk, has had huge cutbacks. And secondly, Meta has released a statement saying no former Twitter employees worked on Threads, which is the new app. So this is something that's going to take years to sort of play its way out, whether it actually gets into a court of law or it's just sort of positioning and posturing. We'll have to wait and see.
So this could be a very lengthy process here. You talked about that back and forth. Elon Musk tweeting, competition is fine, cheating is not. So I take it you don't think that Twitter has a leg to stand on here?
So you know, there are lots of discovery can happen during a court case, but in what we've been able to determine so far, it seems a hard thing to try and prove. So the basic functionality that's there in Threads, which right now just has basic functionality, is not unique to Twitter. So unless there's some way to prove that there's something subtle in an algorithm or a recommendation or something protected under intellectual property law, simply having the kind of posting, replying to posts, et cetera, the kind of thing that Threads has right now, doesn't really seem like there's a strong intellectual property argument.
Right. There have been so many changes at Twitter, so much uncertainty. Do you think Elon Musk is driving people away from Twitter? Do you think people are reconsidering their options?
So it does seem like, Twitter has had challenges for a great many years. Among them, how to be profitable. Among them, things around, misleading information, misinformation, et cetera. Elon Musk seems to have purchased Twitter with a few ideas around improving the business model, but a lot of ideas of changing the philosophy of Twitter. It's kind of trying to map to his own particular interpretation of what free speech means and his goal for what he thinks society needs. Threads has a very different version of this. There are other platforms out there like Mastodon or Blue Sky that have different philosophical interpretations about this. So this is something where we're going to have to see what actually both matches popularity and matches what we as society need. 2023 is not 15 years ago. We're demanding different things from our social media platforms around honesty, around misinformation. And right now, this version of Twitter isn't really following what I think the mass public around the world is demanding.
And this version of Twitter has a lot of people worried. So on that note, if Twitter at some point collapses, what do you think that would mean for essential organizations who rely on Twitter to relay some really crucial information? I'm talking about news organizations, law enforcement, schools, public health, the list goes on and on. How do we get information out if Twitter is no longer a thing?
So this is a huge challenge of the word of the internet age has been disruption, right? You've heard the Silicon Valley developers saying we're disrupting. Disrupting journalism seemed to have, met some needs, but if that then goes away, what do we do for the basic public information and the role that the media had? The business model has been blown up by something we've been part of, the internet age, and what replaces it. So that the big challenge is going to be if there's a public need for information getting out, then are we comfortable leaving that in the hands of private corporations that can come and go, that can change their business model, that can be ad supported and change the recommendations based on a business model? a lot of academics and researchers are calling for a public need. Like, what's the equivalent of public broadcasting, or at least a public value in Canada, much less around the world, around the internet age? Because this is, as you say, has become one of the few ways that can reach all of us.
So many interesting things to think about. Richard Lachman, Associate Professor at Toronto Metropolitan University's RTA School of Media. Thanks so much for your perspective this afternoon.
No problem. Thanks for having me.